Hey guys, so the New Jeans court battle against HYBE and ADOR had another showdown this week. New Jeans did not appear. Again, they're not legally required to appear, but their fancy lawyers from their side brought out the big guns. Basically, they're saying the guys that have the silver hair and are like the senior people. Same thing on HYBE and ADOR's side. It was a packed room, apparently, but not that much dramatic went on in terms of the court of public opinion, but in the court, oh man. And the star of this session was actually, yes, the judge, who came out with some zingers. So this hearing was on June 4th, the same day when the presidential election was fully announced during business hours. And it happened before lunchtime. And you know, there is a common saying that if you go to court after lunch, and if it's sentencing time and you're a criminal, you'll get a much better punishment, like a shorter sentence, than if you do it before lunch when they cranky and their blood sugar is low. Well, he must have been cranky because he's just saying like, look, New Jeans, settle. But he couldn't really say it like, y'all need to settle. He's like, don't you think you should settle? Don't you think it would be better if you settled? And his common theme throughout the whole hearing, when he had to give his questions, which essentially are interpreted as comments as well, was that New Jeans is not gonna win in the court of law. And we saw some shenanigans that the New Jeans side was trying to pull. And their big quotable statement from their lawyers, because again, they weren't there making these statements, was that we crossed a river of no return, like making it all dramatic. We already know that you said you're never going to go back to HYBE or ADOR, but now you got to get a river into it as if it's like 5 boroughs trying to cross the river in search of their piñata. And this is the problem with this situation, is that this case that the New Jeans side is trying to present is so intertwined with Mini Jin's case. So it should be about contract termination for just them if they're supposed to be believed, but they're wrapping in one of the reasons being Mini Jin's firing, not having Mini Jin there, therefore it's mistreatment. And people, including the judge, are beginning to wonder if these New Jeans girls are actually just being used by somebody else. A critical part of this hearing was when the judge asked, hey, so if New Jeans was really pissed off about how they were treated by ADOR and HYBE, at any point, did the girls go directly to ADOR and HYBE to express their dissatisfaction? And apparently, this was not a pre-planned, pre-prepped interview type of situation, because the judge threw a curveball to the New Jeans legal team. And so apparently it seemed like they did not have a ready answer for that, and they stumbled a bit saying like, well, they filed the legal documents. And the judge was like, look, if they are so upset with how they were treated and they think that it is on the level of contract termination, and then they should be asking or talking or at least putting something, if not in writing, expressing their displeasure of how things are going and trying to work it out before saying like, okay, we want to leave. Because this is, again, very hypocritical on New Jean's side, because they're asking for more information from HYBE and essentially trying to corner HYBE in a way where they have to defend themselves. This was the sneaky part. So the New Jeans side requested 15 articles of clarification. Essentially, it's a formal request to the other side to say that we don't understand what your points are. Like when it's basically like essay versus essay, and like people are debating. No, it's not Burrow and essay. It's like, written statements and evidence. And it looked like they were purposefully trying to flood the paper volume with HYBE suddenly being in a defensive position and trying to get them to say something where then they can attack and make that the central focus. Now, the judge is onto them because he only granted 3 of the 15 articles of clarification. And some of them were really ridiculous, like asking, for example, we need to know ADOR's personnel information, give us the biographies or Rolodexes to see if there are people there who are fit enough to manage us. And the judge was like, no, this is more of a management rights issue, and it's not something that is germane to this lawsuit. And they even asked, like, HYBE, explain how you manipulated the media. And the judge was like, look, no, you have to come with the evidence that they manipulated the media. You don't ask them to then say, like, self-incriminate yourself, or if there's not even any evidence there, then what are they going to do? But I think it just opened the door for HYBE to go stronger on Mini Jin's media manipulation, because we have seen from the Kakao Talk messages evidence, and not only the evidence of the messages, but how the messages actually turned into real life media manipulation plays. One, if in particular, now that we're reflecting back on what happened, remember that ridiculous big brouhaha that was made, especially on September 25th, 2024, from the Seoul Shinmun reporter, who's former, so they keep saying like that's also sus because he quit after pulling this media play he's being accused of, because he's the one that reported about like, oh, New Jeans had such like 1 million album sales in Japan, and then HYBE's PR team called him and said, no, it wasn't 1 million in Japan, it's just million overall. Can you fix that data point? Because remember, at that point, there was another media play on HYBE accusing HYBE of manipulating album charts. So you can probably understand how HYBE would want to be very careful and not make mistakes and not be accused of inflating numbers. How was this media played? It turned into a situation where HYBE is trying to downplay and insult New Jeans by telling the truth about the album sales. So it doesn't make sense on the other side. So taking care of New Jeans would be allowing a lie to just continue to spread about them. And yes, it may have been a lie that made them look better, but that's only in the moment. And somebody who really does take care of you will know that actually, well, later down the line, if somebody complains and say like, you totally misrepresented the album sales and now it's hurting New Jeans' credibility, then that's not taking care of them. So HYBE really did do a good job of taking care of New Jeans by making sure that the facts were double checked, and if they weren't correct, to go correct them. So the main thrust of New Jeans' legal argument hasn't changed. It's all around this concept of trust being broken, and trust being broken to a large enough extent where it can justify a unilateral contract termination, like a one-way contract termination. And usually that is only in very extreme cases, and the way that K-pop cases of K-pop artists have gone through the courts with, it's mainly severe abuse and not being paid. That not being paid part seems to be a very critical piece of these cases where people cancel their contracts and have it be allowed by the court. But in Nugent's case, there's really no evidence of being mistreated, and there's certainly no evidence of them not being paid. So the judge even is saying that, some of your points and some of the things, and he was even shading their lawyer, saying like, such a big law firm, like this is not legal arguments. These are emotional arguments. And HYBE's lawyers, Kim and Jung, they stepped on the pedal by saying, look, let's say your reasoning is sound. However, the thing is, your reasoning keeps changing. If you have a breach of trust that is grounds for contract termination, why do you keep changing the reasons? And he was saying, like, you tried reason A, reason B, and reason C. They all didn't work. And so now you're flipping arguments around. If it was such a strong case, these reasons shouldn't be, changing willy-nilly. So the three areas where the judge did grant Nugent's in terms of the 15 areas of clarification, like, I'd like a clarification. Oh, can you please clarify what you're saying? And then they're looking to try to attack. They did accept 3, and they were very much like legalese, contracty. So the first one was whether Minijin had clear independent authority, and specifically about a board meeting, whether it was held before signing exclusive contracts. I think I need a clarification on that too. Second, before or during Minijin's dismissal, did ADOR consult or explain anything to the members? And if not, why did they not mention it to them? Funny how then the judge picked up on this and said, like, wait a minute, let's put the shoe on the other foot. Did the members ever say anything to ADOR or HYBE before they just decided to terminate their contract? Because when you really think about it, and HYBE's position, even if they didn't talk to Nugent's, HYBE or the board of directors of ADOR is completely within their rights to change the staff, including the CEO. The contract was made between the members and ADOR, not Minijin. Maybe you can say like, oh, in spirit, I wanted to follow Minijin like all the Nugent's members say, and like I really love working with her. But legally, and we're talking about court of law, your contract was never with Nugent's mama. She said that she was like, it's like she said that she adopted you, but she didn't sign no adoption papers. And so your legal contract is with ADOR. And so in terms of like ADOR having its own management issue, and this is the way that the court seems to be really focusing on with this case, is that this was more of like what you're complaining about, Nugent's, is more about stuff that like actually has nothing to do with you when it comes into courtroom law, not like, your hallway law. However, this is also easily rebutted by HYBE and ADOR because Nugent's publicly shot themselves in the foot. Remember with that September press conference, the one where it's just like, oh, do you understand, when Minji was like trying to like shade a reporter? Do you understand now? That press conference happened before the response letter came in from the lawyers. Remember how there was like a 3-hour delay of this press conference? That was also, they were panicking because their position was, we gave ADOR 2 weeks to reply, and they didn't even bother replying. They've just thrown us away. They don't even talk to us. Meanwhile, a huge reply was sitting in all of their inboxes, but their press conference was like scheduled, I think around like 6 p.m. and then the email came in at 7 p.m. So how you going to say they never replied when the deadline was that night at midnight. So even after they got the response, they did the press conference. So it was a complete lie in terms of them saying like, well, they never consulted us or talked to us about the issues. They fully did in paper format in a whole report. And the third clarification request that was granted by the judge was, did HYBE or ADOR voluntarily take actions to protect NewJeans in response to plagiarism accusations or allegations? That's interesting, because if it was ADOR's responsibility, that would fall on Minnie Jin. So Minnie Jin made the accusations, and then she would be responsible for addressing it herself. So this makes no sense, because after it was resolved internally, it was resolved. And so everybody did what they were supposed to do. But they're trying to, like stretch this like some taffy that is just gonna get your teeth stuck. And the really cool thing that the judge did, because he's definitely obviously not a bunny uncle, although, can never trust the hops of, them judges. But he also granted permission to HYBE and ADOR side to get the Kakao Talk evidence that was submitted by Source Music. Remember Source Music's lawsuit against Minnie Jin? The last hearing was stymied by Minnie Jin saying like, oh, those Kakao Talk messages that are in this PowerPoint that they're about to press play on were illegally obtained. So we can't do the presentation. We can't, use this evidence. And then the judge was like, well, we have to wait until, okay, fine, let's review whether you're allowed to use these Kakao Talk messages. Well, this judge over here in NewJeans versus ADOR and HYBE said like, well, yeah, bring it over, bring that evidence over. Why not? And so we're going to see some more crazy Kakao Talk messages, or the presentation of Kakao Talk messages that we have already seen, which show clear intent for NewJeans Mama to do media plays, use false flag issues to destroy HYBE outside so that they can win inside, and then be painting themselves as the victims. So really, the big part of this was the judge saying like, look, if you were so emotionally damaged, why did you not even say a word? I mean, these girls are the ones that say a word to the world if Chairman Pang Shi-hyuk doesn't say hello to them properly in the elevator. When making up this drama in the hallway, the whole world and even the National Assembly of South Korea knows. But yet they never told HYBE or ADOR how they felt directly before all this drama. So what the judge is seeming to recognize is ADOR and HYBE's lawyers' point that it looks like NewJeans Mama just planned this from the beginning to try to cancel the contract, and now they're just looking for excuses in order to justify it. And so the onus is on evidence from NewJeans trying to prove that they were mistreated, and evidence from HYBE and ADOR saying that they were doing all of their obligations to fulfill their duties as the producers of NewJeans. So that is also why we saw, and we were all just like, oh gosh, I hope there must be a game here. Otherwise they like HYBE and ADOR just look like pushovers. They're still paying them. They're still like planning out their meetings. They're still like saying, hey girls, come back and let's talk about your upcoming albums and world tours. Yeah, because they needed to have plenty of documentation that they fulfilled their duties, and then NewJeans just never showed up to the meetings. NewJeans just closed the door. NewJeans was the one that did not fulfill their obligations. So really the question is whether Minnie Jin is actually just using this case to help her case. And there is some theories out there saying that it's kind of weird to see NewJeans trying to delay and stretch out this lawsuit. They should be the ones trying to speed it up so that they could get back to their K-pop idleness if they still can. And even the judge intimated, like, look, you only have your precious beauty for so long, and your talent and your appeal like is limited. Darn, you sure you don't want to settle and get this over with and get back on to the stage? But it looks like if New Jeans loses early and loses hard, then Mini Jin really has no hope. And so they did tie their boats together. And it looks like, and the judge is really seeming to question, like, who really is behind this? Are other people pushing New Jeans into this legal suit where it looks like, they're not fighting for themselves. They're fighting essentially for Mini Jin. And that is the scariest part of these rapids in that so-called river of no return. They really don't even have to participate in it, but it does look like, and we'll probably see from more of the evidence, that this had been agreed upon long before, and all of the grace and the benefit of the doubt that we gave to the parents probably gonna go poof as we see a lot more coordination. Well, I mean, even the Davolink situation of getting that Wi-Fi manufacturer as their new home and investor was set up by the family. So let's call a spade, and we always got some of them families. Well, yeah, these are them families doing the most like this. All right, guys, what do you think? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.